In this lesson, we're going to discuss multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication, commonly referred to as MFA, is a security system that requires more than one method of authentication from independent categories of credentials to verify the user's identity. The goal of multi-factor authentication is to create a layered defense and make it more difficult for an unauthorized person to access a target such as a physical location, computing device, network, or database. Multi-factor authentication revolves around the concept of combining at least two or more independent credentials from across 5 different categories of authentication, including something you know, or a knowledge-based factor, something you have, or a possession-based factor, something you are, or an adherence-based factor, something you do, or a behavior-based factor, and somewhere you are, or a location-based factor. First, we have something that you know. This is also known as a knowledge-based factor. Something you know involves knowledge-based information that the user must provide to authenticate their identity, such as a password or a PIN, or answer some secret question about the user like their pet's name. For example, when you try to unlock your iPhone using the 6-digit PIN, you are using something you know or a knowledge-based factor. Second, we have something you have, also known as possession-based factor. Something you have involves something the user physically possesses, like a smart card or a hardware token like a key fob or a software token used with your smartphone. A smart card is an identification card about the size of a credit card that is embedded with an integrated circuit that can process data to authenticate a user in a high security access system. When I used to work for the US government, I was issued a smart card which acted as my employee identification badge. I would insert this smart card into my laptop and enter a 6 to 8 digit PIN to unlock the smart card, and this in turn would unlock my laptop to let me begin my workday. In this setup, the smart card was the possession factor and the PIN was a knowledge factor. So using the smart card and PIN created a pretty secure multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication system. A hardware token, also known as a key fob, is a physical device used for securing access by generating a unique code that is then typically used within a multi-factor authentication system. These portable devices enhance security by creating a rapidly changing code that is sent to the user every 30 to 60 seconds during the authentication process. This user must provide the code in addition to their regular login credentials to ensure that the person who is attempting to gain access actually possesses the correct physical device. This significantly reduces the likelihood of unauthorized access through stolen credentials, since the attacker would also need to be in possession of the hardware token in order to access the given system. Another commonly used type of hardware token is a USB-based hardware token that contains a digital private key certificate that can be used during the authentication process. With these types of hardware keys, you simply need to have the device connected to your workstation or laptop during the login process. The digital certificate located on the hardware token is checked as part of your possession factor authentication process. A software token or soft token is used to perform the same function as a hardware token, but don't require a dedicated piece of hardware like a smart card, key fob, or USB hardware token. Instead, a software token or soft tokens are typically configured as an application or piece of software that is installed on a device that the user already possesses, like their smartphone, tablet, smartwatch, laptop, or desktop computer. When the user attempts to log in, the software token software will generate a one-time code that the user enters during the authentication process. Like hardware tokens, these codes are typically time-based and will change every 30 to 60 seconds. Generally, software tokens will take two forms: an authenticator app or an SMS-based one-time code use token. Authenticator apps like Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator can be used to generate time-based one-time passcodes for use in the authentication process for most websites or applications. These authenticator apps work exactly like the hardware token key fobs we just discussed, but use a software authenticator app that allows for cheaper and faster deployments to your user located across your enterprise network. The second type of software token relies on using your smartphone as the token receiving system itself by sending you a one-time code to the user's registered phone number or email address. In this system, the SMS-based message is received with a one-time code that is then valid for between 3 to 10 minutes. During that time, the user must enter their login credentials, which is something they know, and this one-time code, which is now considered something they have or possession factor, since they had to have the phone to receive that one-time code. Using either a hardware or software token can provide an extra layer of security in the multi-factor authentication system. The specific choice between using a hardware or software token will depend on the specific needs and resources of your organization. Third on the list is something you are, also known as inherent space factor. Something you are involves biometric characteristics that are unique to individuals, including fingerprints, facial recognition, voice recognition, or iris scans. Older iPhones, for example, rely on a fingerprint scan to unlock a user's smartphone. According to Apple, there's a 1 in 50,000 chance that another person's finger could be used to unlock your iPhone because their systems are tuned pretty well to prevent a false acceptance. But using Face ID system is even better and has been widely used for about the last 5 years now. If you use a modern smartphone like an Apple iPhone or an Android phone, you probably use biometrics to unlock your phone on a daily basis by using a facial recognition scan. With Apple's Face ID, for example, you can simply look at the front-facing camera whenever you want to unlock your phone, and the phone will then use the True Depth camera to capture a new image in depth map, which is then analyzed by a neural engine inside of the phone that compares this newly taken image against the biometric facial data already stored on the phone. If the image and the stored data match, then the device will unlock itself. With Face ID, Apple claims that the probability that another person's face will unlock your iPhone is approximately 1 in a million, making it about 20 times more secure than a former fingerprint-based authentication system used in older models of the iPhone. In recent years, biometric factors have rapidly increased in their utilization, especially with multi-factor authentication systems due to the advancements of this type of authentication technology and its inherent difficulty in replicating someone's biometric authentication data. Fourth, we have somewhere you are, also known as a location-based factor. Somewhere you are involves determining a user's location to help authenticate them. This can be done through IP address verification, GPS tracking, or by connecting to a specific network. For example, access points may be restricted to a user within a specific geographical location, such as allowing someone to log into a given website only if they are located outside of the United States. Fifth, we have something you do, also known as a behavior-based factor. Something you do involves recognizing patterns that are typically associated with a user, such as their keystroke patterns, mouse movement, or even the way they walk down the hallway. Something you do is considered one of the newer categories that are used in multi-factor authentication systems, and something you do is often used as a secondary factor in authentication systems and is rarely used in a single-factor authentication system. Another example of behavior-based factors could be the way someone interacts with a device, such as their specific pattern of swiping, scrolling, or even the way they hold their device. These unique behavior patterns can then be used to create a profile that helps authenticate the user's identity. Now, when it comes to authentication, we have 3 main types: single-factor, two-factor, and multi-factor. Single-factor authentication involves using a single authentication factor to access a user account. For example, if you simply enter your username and password to log into the website, that is a single-factor authentication. Now, wait a minute, isn't the username one factor and the password a second factor? So wouldn't this be considered two-factor authentication? Well, no, because both of those are something you know, or knowledge-based factors. Even if I added a security question after you enter your username and password, like asking your first pet's name or the high school mascot, this is still considered a single-factor authentication because all 3 pieces of authentication data, your username, your password, and the answer to your security question are considered to be knowledge-based factors. This brings us to our next type of authentication, which is two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication, also known as 2FA, involves using 2 different authentication factors to gain access to a system. So, if you enter your username and password as part of the authentication process, that will be the first factor. Then if you are sent a text message to your smartphone with a random 6-digit code, that will be a second factor, since this is a possession factor proving that you have your smartphone with you. Now we have 2FA, or two-factor authentication, since we're required to enter our knowledge-based factor and then provide our possession-based factor, giving us 2 factors of authentication. Now, if you have 2 factors, you may also hear this called multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication occurs whenever you use 2 or more factors to authenticate within a given system. So 2FA is actually considered MFA as well, but it is a specific type of MFA since MFA can use 2, 3, 4, or 5 factors for authentication. As a basic rule, the more types of authentication that you use to validate a user, the safer your system will be. But conversely, the more factors you require, the harder it is for your end users to gain access to the system in order to complete their work, making this a security versus convenience trade-off. For this reason, most companies will use multi-factor authentication systems using 2 or 3 factors. Something you know, something you have, or something you know, something you are, something you have, and somewhere you are. As you have probably guessed, the most commonly used authentication factor is knowledge-based authentication factor like passwords and PINs. Passwords have been a fundamental part of security for a long time, but they often pose challenges for both our users and our developers. Remembering a lot of different complex passwords can be a difficult task for most users, so this leads to many simply using weaker and easy to remember passwords or reusing the same long, strong password across multiple websites, which in turn removes most of the security benefits of having that long, strong password to begin with. Many users will also use a password manager like Bitwarden, or even a built-in password manager like the one provided in Google Chrome, which is called the Google Password Manager. These password managers can generate different long, strong, and complex passwords for each website or application that you use, and then it will store these passwords safely in a centralized vault that is encrypted using a single long, strong password that you created. Personally, I found this to be an effective way to maintain high security when using a password-based system without having to remember 300 plus passwords. In reality though, the use of password managers to create unique passwords does increase our security a bit, but passwords in general still inherently lack a lot of the robust security that we want to achieve. To increase our security, we may opt to use multi-factor authentication, but this will introduce additional steps that the user must take when logging into the system, and it increases our overall cost to implement an authentication solution. Fortunately, there is now a valid alternative to using passwords for authentication, and this brings us to the world of passkeys. Passkeys are the next evolutionary step towards passwordless authentication, and they can offer us a simpler, more secure cross-device authentication method where users can create and access online accounts without needing to input a password. With passkeys, the browser or operating system prompts users to create a passkey. Users then simply use their device's lock screen, like a fingerprint sensor or facial recognition scan, to secure these passkeys, which eliminates the need to type or remember anything during the authentication process. Instead, when the user wants to log in, they are simply prompted to unlock the device using their preferred authentication factor, like a facial scan or a fingerprint, depending on the type of device being used. Many websites and apps have already adopted the use of passkeys, and they are already reporting that they are seeing multiple benefits, including increased login success rates, lower drop-off rates, improved conversion rates, and reduced costs associated with separate multi-factor authentication solutions. Passkeys offer more robust protection against phishing and data breaches as well, which is important since these are probably the two most significant security threats that passwords fail to mitigate against. Passkeys utilize public key cryptography with the private key securely stored on the user's device and created using the screen lock functionality and the user's fingerprint, facial recognition, PIN, or unlock pattern. The corresponding public key is stored on the authentication server. Since there are no secrets on the server, only the public keys, these passkeys are not susceptible to compromise if the server is breached by an attacker. Also, each passkey is unique to the service it was created for, so this prevents users from being misled into using their stored passkeys on malicious websites or applications. So remember, multi-factor authentication methods provide a higher level of security than single-factor authentication methods. Authentication factors are crucial in validating a user's identity, and various methods offer us different layers of security. Something you know refers to a piece of information only the user should know, like a password or a PIN. Something you have involves the physical device that a user possesses, such as a smartphone receiving a verification code or a hardware token like a key fob. Something you are encompasses biometrics, which are unique physical characteristics of a user that are used to verify identity, including fingerprints or retina scans. Something you do captures the unique behavior of a user, like signature dynamics or keystroke patterns. Lastly, somewhere you are leverages the user's location as an authentication mechanism to restrict access to specific services unless the user's geographic location, often determined through GPS or IP address, matches the expected area. Each factor contributes to a holistic approach to security and ensures that your authentication systems are robust and multidimensional. Implementing multi-factor authentication systems makes it harder for unauthorized users to attack or to gain access to your organization's system information systems or data.